Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Welcome to our webinar about compliance and traceability on EUDR. Thank you all for joining us today. We have over 700 people registered today, and we welcome all of them. They come all over the world. We have over 87 nationalities present today, and we want to welcome all of you. Today, we're going to talk about EUDR compliance and the evolution of traceability platform. On behalf of everyone here at SCS Consulting Services, I would like to welcome you today. I'm your host, Jean-Pierre Gerin, Manager Director of SCS Consulting Services in Europe. I'm based in The Hague, Netherlands, and together with me is Mohamed Abdul Rasek, our Technical Manager. He's based in Bonn, Germany. Before we start our presentation today, I would like to take a moment for housekeeping and go and update all of you on our event platform, GoToWebinar, and how to engage with us during the webinar. To avoid any unnecessary background noises during the presentation, all attendees have been muted, and this will remain a one-way presentation for the duration of the event. If you would like to ask a question, please go to the questions section in the control panel on the upper right side of our webinar console. Once you type your question and hit send, your question will be sent to us for review. Depending on the time allowed at the end of the presentation, we will make every effort to answer all these questions. Any questions that we are unable to answer will be responded to you after the event by email. Today's presentation is being recorded, and link to the recording will be made available to all registrants and attendees after the conclusion of the webinar. So let's move on to EUDR compliance and the evolution of traceability platforms. Hi everybody, I'm Jean-Pierre, and I'll be your host today. So I would like to provide a quick overview of SCS and the different services we provide. Our group, SCS Consulting, is dedicated to sustainability under the SCS brand. This year, our sister company, SCS Global Services, is celebrating 40 years of anniversary, a very long time in sustainability. And this has been a built-in leadership around the sustainability standards, development, certification, and auditing. SCS Standards supports standard development and the standard schemes management. And we have the announcement of a new sister in the company group. The Global Heat Reduction Initiative Climate Protocol measures all drivers of global warming, enabling business, governments, and investors meet our climate targets while supporting mitigation projects. More than just another standard or program, global heat reduction is a game-changing innovation spreadhead created by our late founder, Dr. Stan Rhodes, and it's the late culmination of more than a decade of work done collectively by dozens of SCS staff, researchers, and scientists. For more information, please visit us at heatreduction.com. So let's introduce SCS Consulting Services, a leader in climate, environmental, and sustainability consulting. We're expanding our operations now in Europe with an office in the Netherlands to meet rising demand of sustainability service driven by the EU and global regulations. The European Union has introduced strict regulations like the European Union Deforestation Regulation. We're going to be talking about that today. But also, for example, the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, making it essential for business to adopt sustainable practices and ensure transparency in the supply chains. SCS Consulting Services, with our experience in environmental standards, is here to help business navigate through these challenges. We offer environmental due diligence services to financial institutions, follow IFC performance standards and European leading requirements. These services may help you at certain points of your development. At SCS Consulting Services, we're committed to help companies implement sustainability solutions. Our mission is to work closely with your clients to build, execute, and sustainability strategies that create positive impacts and enhance business resilience in a changing climate. Today, our agenda has to do with the EUDR. First, we are going to try to an overview. And probably you have seen this, but let's refresh a little bit and recall what it takes. Then we're going to go and talk about the value of the chain actors and their responsibilities, the level of traceability required by EUDR, the traceability platforms, and the opportunities, risk, and selection criteria. Just remember, when we talk about software, if software is free, maybe somewhere is the product and it's not the product, the software you're getting. And finally, we'll share with you some consultancy services that we have tailored for the EUDR. Here with me is Mohamed. Please, Mohamed.
Hello, everyone. I am Mohamed Abdelrazik, a technical director at SCS Consulting EU. I am based in Germany, Bonn. As Jean-Pierre mentioned, many of you have already you have information on EUDR. So we are trying not to give you all the information here, just a quick overview of the EU Deforestation Regulation. The objective of the EUDR is to combat global deforestation. It covers 7 commodities: soy, beef, palm oil, wood, cocoa, coffee, rubber, and a whole list of certain of derived products. 3 requirements before placing any of these of any product on the list into the EU: deforestation free and legally produced, traceability to production level or plot, due diligence and due diligence statement. The applicability is the legal applicability is for operators and traders in Europe, and the compliance deadline is at the end of this year, December 30th, for most operators and traders. The key requirements again, we have the commodities have to be or must be deforestation free, and in case of wood, they have to be also forest degradation free. The commodities must be produced in accordance with the relevant legislations of the country of origin. There are 8 categories of legislations that are required under the EUDR. They don't tell you how is it exactly done, but just that the application of these 8 categories or the production is according to the law. Production here has a very specific meaning. It doesn't mean production in a factory. It just means harvesting at the plot level or at the establishment, beef establishment level. And the commodities must be covered by a due diligence statement before importing them or placing them or making them available within the EU. Last year, in June 29th, 2023, the EUDR entered into force. So it is into force today. We are in the transition period, and that transition period is going to end on December 30th for most operators and traders, except for micro and small enterprises, which is defined based on the number of employees and the balance sheet, for example, or the turnover per year. Keep in mind that you always hear the term SMEs, which means micro, small, and medium enterprises. Medium enterprises must comply by the end of this year, not by June 30th. And the micro and small enterprises, they must have been established before December 31st, 2020, and not subject to EU timber regulation. So there are always regulations in this one and rules inside rules. Comes one question that we'd like to review: is my product subject to EUDR or not? First, is the question would be: is the custom code, the HS code, or the CN code, the combined nomenclature code of the product, is listed within the EUDR or not? If it's not listed there, then it's out. If it is listed there, then the second question would be: does the product contain any of the 7 commodities and is in the Annex 1 of the regulation or not? Because in some cases you might have a code that it's within the annex. It's applied for natural rubber and synthetic rubber. Synthetic rubber is definitely excluded from the EUDR. As the next question: is the product explicitly excluded in Annex 1? For example, if it's used for packaging, or there is actually one word called EX, which means an extract. It's not excluded, it means extract, but everything else will be excluded. If it's used for packaging, it's out. And if it is used 100% waste, it's also out. So you have to be careful with the definition of a waste. EUDR is a regulation, means it is applied it's the highest level of legislation inside the EU, and it is applicable to all European countries, let's say homogeneously. The waste is defined under a directive. A directive means that the EU publishes it, and then the countries have to integrate it into their local legislations. Hence, the waste, one waste might be in a country recognized as a waste and another as a co-product within the EU. So that part is not always easy. But what we can say for now is it has to be 100% waste. If the answer is yes, then the product will be under the requirement. If no, then it's out. What are the responsibilities of the actors of the value chain? Here we have an example of a forest management unit, extremely simple one. You have transportation, sawmill, merchant, and then the wood is transported by ship to Europe. At the forest management unit, we have the legality according to the 8 categories, the geo-coordinates of the plots, 1 point if it's less than 4 hectares, polygon, that if it's more than 4 hectares. And then it must be deforestation free, and in case of wood, also forest degradation free. All the actors in between, let's call them intermediaries, there has to be the traceability has to go on, and there has to be also physical segregation. Once the material is inside Europe or arrives to Europe, the operator, which is in this case will be the importer, they have due diligence obligations. They have to do data collection, risk assessment, and risk mitigation. Unless they are importing from a low risk country, means that they just have to collect the data, but no risk mitigation and no risk assessment. Keep in mind that the due diligence here, or the due diligence statement, must be submitted before the material, the shipment, the consignment is released from customs. It's at the moment actually the due diligence statement is submitted through the customs, and only when they have it, then and all the other requirements, then it will be released for circulation. Operator and trader. You think of an operator as somebody is operating machines, they are producing something, and trader is somebody who's buying and selling stuff. It's not that simple within the EUDR, hence we have kind of a graph for it. The question for you would be, do you handle or trade any of the commodities or the derived products within the EU that are subject to the EUDR requirements or not? If the answer is no, so the question comes, do they export them from the EU? If you are exporting them, then that is automatically means you are an operator. You are not producing anything, you are simply exporting material. That is a definition of an operator. If the answer was yes, so you are dealing with it within the EU, do you import these derived products? The importer is also an operator. If the answer is no, do you place the product on the EU market for the first time? For instance, the example that we give for the forest management unit. This forest management unit can be in Europe, and then the owner harvested the wood and then started placing it inside the EU for the first time. Hence, in that case, the owner of the forest management unit is considered an operator, and they have to submit a due diligence statement. They have to do the whole part. Of course, as I mentioned, low-risk countries has a different perspective or different requirements. If the answer was no, do you transform the relevant commodities or products into a different product, and that new product is within the annex of the EU or of the EUDR? If the answer is yes, then you are again an operator. But here there is a distinction between the first operator and the downstream operator. And at the end, do you distribute or trade the products? If the answer is yes, then you are a trader. So as you can see that the definition of an operator is overlapping a lot with somebody who is just doing trade. Here is an example of a company that is importing palm oil from Indonesia. Of course, this is an extremely simplified value chain or supply chain, where we have the palm oil producer. They have their estates. They might have smallholders. They might also buying from other external parties. They might have a plasma scheme somewhere. And all of them, they are providing to the oil mill. Everybody's checked. The same for the oil mill. They are doing the segregation, and then the shipment goes inside the EU. Before the shipment arrives to the EU, the oil mill sent all the required material information on the legality, on the quantity, and all the other requirements to the operator. The operator has done the first step, which is collecting the data. Then they go for the second one, risk assessment. And in case, of course, they must have done that before. In case there is a risk that is non-negligible, then they have to do risk mitigation. Then they submit the due diligence statement, or DDS. They receive a reference number. That reference number they have to give ahead downstream. Here is another example where we have an operator and trader due diligence obligations. Here it gets more complicated for the operators and the traders, where we have a soybean feed from Brazil coming from Mato Grosso. It's collected into, there is a check of the legality, the geo-coordinates are available, there is no deforestation using remote sensing and GIS, very strong reports on the legality and on the deforestation free. The materials are shipped to the operator, to Europe, and the operator gets beforehand all the information they need to conduct a due diligence. The first operator conducts the due diligence, they submit the due diligence statement, and then they receive the due diligence statement reference number, and the material is being released from for circulation within the EU. And then they sell their soybean to a trader. The trader, their obligation is based on whether they are SME, small, medium, or micro, small, or medium enterprise, or non-SME. It gets complicated. And then if that trader sold it to another operator, it also depends on whether they are SME or non-SME, on whether they are making changes to the material from the one that they received. They received it in an HS code, cocoa beans, for example, and then they are letting it out in cocoa butter. That's two different products, and each one has to have their own due diligence. It is quite complicated process. However, this is the situation. And in our hypothetical example here, the final consumer is a poultry farmer that is located within the EU. They don't have any obligations, further ones. Of course, this is an extremely short and simple introduction. We do offer an entire workshop of 4 hours to go through the whole EUDR. This is just a simple introduction. So here comes a question for all of you. What is your role in the supply chain? And if it's more than one role, just choose the one that best fits your need or your role. A farmer, grower, producer, an intermediary. An intermediary is by definition, this has to be outside of the EU. An operator located inside the EU, importer, exporter, or somebody who is using the material, converting it to another material that is within Annex 1. A trader that is not changing the material, or other. We'd appreciate you letting us know what is the level or what is the role that you play within the supply chain.
I think that the numbers has been stabilized, and I'm happy to share that. You know, it's quite yep. Everybody has a lot of presence, and it's quite balanced between producers, intermediary, and operators. But we have a very interesting 28% others. I'm wondering what this huge presence of people from other areas of the EUDR interest are. We welcome all of them. Let's go and move to the next slide. So here we have an example of a supply chain. And we're starting with a product, a coffee, that is harvested in Macará, Ecuador, in South America. And in little South America, south of Ecuador, remote area. And this coffee has to travel all across the 7 seas to reach a consumer, let's say in Visby, Sweden. And this reminds me a little bit of my family, because my wife is a coffee, they come from a coffee producing family. And I can remember very clearly the smell of roasting coffee at her parents' house. But then also for me, the smell of coffee reminds me of my grandmother in Sweden. So what has happened in between? It's a complicated road. And we have all these steps. And again, probably this is very simplified. And EUDR is asking us to collect all this information. So many of you are relying on traceability platforms. I'm calling this, my version of the Uber is called Routify. So my Routify is collecting all the data possible in this path. But I question if this is necessary. Because the producers, when they are asking about providing information about their legality, they may think about, should I present, the list of my workers? Should I present that I have paid the social security, that I have paid my taxes for the property? What is what they are asking? And then the guys in the roasting facility, do they have to provide information? I mean, they are, they are the cousins of the producers, and they don't know. Should we add their information and location? Because, well, we are collecting here the coffee from this area of Macará, and so what we have to do? And this could become very overwhelming. So the question is how we're going to deal with all this information. And we go for next one, please. So in a more simplest way, this is the path. This is the road that our little car has to go and collect all this information. So we all agree that the information as the source is the producer. But we also have to understand that the information he's providing is his information, and he has the rights for this information. So we're going to be providing information from a third party to other people on how legal is this, under which regulations, in which countries. So that's kind of the first alarm of what we are doing here. And you have to think about the GDPR in Europe, which is very important. And some of the traders are based in the US, and they have their own levels for GDPR. And some of the producing countries are already thinking about this. Like I know the GDPR in Indonesia and Malaysia are quite interesting regulations today. Next, please. So we see how our car has moved and now is ready to get exported, this product. They have been collecting information all through the way, through this path. And they collected information and in the middleman, the roaster, on the packaging, and our car is full of information plus the coffee. And they're ready to get into the trader or the exporter with this information. Next, please. Now we get stopped. Customs. They are asking us about the information. Have we uploaded the correct information in the website with the mapping, with the right, geographical coordinated systems? And we come with this humongous package of information. And the guy in customs doesn't know what to do with all this information because they have not required this. So what have they required? Where should this be? But I brought everything with me on my package, on my Routify package. Is this real? Now, are these platforms collecting the right information on the right spots? That's what we're going to see on the next slide. So this is what is required. And it says operators might collect precise geographic coordinates from the plots. single point for areas below 4 hectares, and a polygon for areas beyond 4 hectares. And they also have to collect the information to demonstrate that this has been produced legally. Or do they mean the information that proves that this was produced legal? What do we need? Is all the information, or we need a process that proves this is produced legally? And also we have to do a due diligence on the other side. So who's getting the due diligence? This is happening into the other side of the fence, across the border. This is the organization that has to be audited, is the importer. Next, please. I don't know if you're aware, when we upload information in a system, and there's thousands of data points, today with artificial intelligence and the big data models, we can find a lot of information. I'll invite you to get into Google Trends, and today just put in the worldwide level EUDR, and you're going to find where in the world people are talking about EUDR. This screen was done 3 days ago, and we can see that in Scandinavia, you know, it's darker, that's the darker blue. It was a hot spot, and they were talking about EUDR. So there's a lot of interest on EUDR, but we can also see that there's a lot of interest in EUDR in the United States, Canada, Brazil, Europe, India. But strangely, Central America and Colombia, it's not a highlight. Are they aware of EUDR? The interesting thing is, if you collect the right information and you treat this information wisely, you can get a lot of insights about the market and the regulations and what is happening in your market. So this is just a free showcase of, you know, big data is there, and you can treat it and you can use this information. Now let's go back to EUDR. Next, please. So if we think that we are providing a lot of information to these platforms, we have to be careful. And we have to realize that the information, who's the owner of this information? Think, you know, if you're a trader, are you going to rely on a third party to have all your information about where you're sourcing, who's your client, what's the specific information from your client? What happens if we're being sent information we should not have in our hands? For example, maybe the producers send the titles of their land. Should we keep this information? For how long we should keep this information? We have to think about how big data could be a model here, and artificial intelligence could be and could predict, you know, supply shortages, price fluctuations, or how the importer or the retailer are behaving. So with all this information we are producing here for the EUDR, if we don't send the right information to the right location, we're putting our businesses in jeopardy. And we have to be careful how we manage all these data sets of information. Next, please. So when we're talking about traceability and risk, I'm gonna suggest and recommend everybody that we look at all these points of how we can have and how we can handle the information. Because information is market power, information represents possibilities, market capacities, and you can either generate products or you can be the product. So I'll invite you to consider how you're going to be managing the risk of managing your platform for traceability in your own business. Next, please. So, yes, there is a lot of information required. I'm sorry, there's little text here, but it represents the level of traceability required. But this information should be available if it's required by the system, and it should be available to backtrace this information. So this information, for example, who roasted the coffee should be available because they want to know if they're going to backtrace the coffee. They know the path where it came from, and they want to know where it was roasted, when it was roasted. Yes, this information should be available, but at what level? At the level of the roasting company and at the level of the collector or the who's ensembling the coffee from various roasters, or the trader. But that's where the information should go. So you should shift the information probably one level up and let the information rest there, and don't transfer the whole package all the way, because this is completely unnecessary. We can work with you on defining what is the information you're required to transfer and what kind of protocols you should use to transfer this information. It's necessary to have it, but it's not necessary to be transporting this information all the way through the traceability system. Next, please. So when you're looking at your traceability platform, I'll invite you to think about this. And especially on the first point, I marked there data ownership. Who is the owner of the data, and how the system is going to protect this data? How transparent, easy of use, how you can customize, how you can transfer the information from one platform to the next platform, how you're going to transfer all the information from, let's say, farm to the roaster, to the collector, to the exporter, to the trader, and finally to the importer and consumer. So these platforms should have capacities to transfer that information. Or maybe you should build your own capacities in your own organization to manage this, because at the end, we're not looking at transferring lots of information. We should transfer selected information. Mohamed is going to help us here.
Yeah, thanks, Jean-Pierre. We can also add a few points on the previous slide. You have a huge boom of traceability platforms that are working on the EUDR. We have met with some of them. Some of them are doing great work. We have met. I have in mind two, for example, that really were outstanding. One of them is located here in Germany, and the other one is based in the UK. You really need to have these criteria before giving your data to them, as Jean-Pierre mentioned. The data security Jean-Pierre mentioned. You have also, do they have a data input validation or not? Somebody is inputting the data. It's just if the data input is rubbish, everything is bad. You have a bad due diligence statement that has to be there for 5 years, then you have a problem. The ease of use. Traditionally, the traceability platforms were very bad, very user unfriendly. Now it's getting better. Performance and scalability. If you want it to run all the time, you have now 1,000 producer, and then in the future you might have 100,000. You just need to check that the platform that you are using is able to do this scaling. If you require API, the application program interface, which basically is the way that the two software communicate. You have this software that you use for traceability, and you would like it to communicate in a kind of a box. One gives the other software something, and one of them is the EUDR information system. They have their own API, so you can submit the due diligence through an API if this is something of interest to you. Of course, the price model and the cost, is it per company? Is it per actor within the supply chain? Is it per commodity or product? To also have a clear understanding of the technical architecture and infrastructure, software, hardware, is it up to date or not? Are they using a good database, for instance, PostgreSQL, MySQL? You have many databases. Which ones are they using? You have an understanding of the security that they have behind this whole thing. And also maintenance. Do they maintain it regularly? The software gets obsolete very fast. Online software too. Support. if you have a question or if you have a problem. For instance, you are not able to write certain letters in Spanish, or the words that you're writing in Chinese are not getting into, or whatever. And documentation in a way that is simple and easy for you and for your suppliers to include, and then also in a language that is understandable, and hence at the end, of course, customization if you would require something like that. The services that we provide on that part are quite diverse. Apologies, I'm moving backward. This is an example of the services that we do. We have it for producers, cooperatives, coffee growers, farmers, estates, oil mills, everybody, intermediaries, who is between the producer until the end. If you remember, the producers, they have to have the legality and the deforestation free, and in the case of wood, it has to be forest degradation free. Then we have the intermediaries, where they have segregation, and then the operators and traders who have to submit the due diligence. So for example, an EUDR training that is for producers specifically, or for intermediaries, or for operators we can provide that with a much deeper understanding and examples. Mapping the supply chains, or mapping the supply base, excuse me, the plots. What do you need? What kind of software? The error assessment, documentation of the process, conducting a deforestation risk assessment, and in case some producers, replanting, for instance, in many commodities will be shown as deforestation. Some people working in the wood might think that cutting the wood is a deforestation. It's not. Of course, it depends. There is a very specific definition for that. And in case very high resolution is needed, or even field visits, this we can provide to producers. And token of producers, the example 3 services, we have also basically compile the data that they should be given out to what platform, if they are interested, or if they just want to send the data as is, to ensure full EUDR compliance, and they ensure that the importers, the operators in Europe, are getting enough information to conduct the due diligence and submit the due diligence statement with no fines, no delays at the customs, and so on. We also provide quite a large number of services for the intermediaries and operators. Here are some examples. For example, gap analysis for the company and for the internal system of the company, for the due diligence system within the company, but also for the suppliers. Are their suppliers ready or not? Are they, and we can also create a kind of risk assessment of those suppliers and of certain supply chains, which ones are more risky and why, and what should be done based on that. We can also create stakeholder engagement and communication strategy if this is needed for intermediaries and operators or traders. And in case something is more detailed, tailored internal system, due diligence system development and implementation. Here's a fictive example of a coffee cooperative that they would like at the end to reach to step number 5, which is compile the EUDR proofs and information flow down the value chain. It can start with training in the local language of the producers and of everybody who is collecting the data. How should they be able to collect the data? What kind of software should they use, for example? What is the data security that is needed? And then comes the second one. If they would like to have our help to map the grower data, ensure that the GIS data is in the proper format. For example, that it's in a certain projection, that the data included is enough. A polygon should not be intersecting with itself, and some additional parts. And then we can conduct to them a detailed risk assessment. We have years of experience with conducting deforestation risk assessment for thousands, hundreds of thousands of producers. Then basically filter them into the ones that are, let's say, higher risk, to use more data with the detailed assessment, higher resolution imagery, And in some cases, which we had in the past, for example, for mixed gardens in Indonesia, where it looks from the satellite images as if this is a forest. However, when you go under the canopy, it's not a forest, and most of the people have already geotagged pictures with GPS coordinates on them to prove that this is not a deforestation, it's rather just a simple replanting. Another step number 4, which is the legality assessment. What kind of proofs are used within that country that would constitute a strong evidence that can be handed over to the operator or to the next entity within the value chain. You don't need to give all the data, as Jean-Pierre mentioned. Some of the data can be kept only when needed is asked for, but this is we have to discuss with you, if you're an operator, with the producers, with the intermediaries, and reach what is the best, what is legal within the country that you are operating in, and what is, of course, satisfying at the end, or the compliance with the EUDR. Here is another example with the palm oil importer. It can start for the import. I mean, here, this is an importer, means they are an operator. It doesn't mean if they're producing anything. An importer is by definition exporter the same. They are both legal or under the legal definition of an operator. And then we can have a training and gap analysis. What do they have today? What do they have to change from them, from their suppliers, until what date, to ensure that the commodity is coming, into Europe after the beginning of the new year, or after the cutoff of December 30th, the end of this year, is compliant and is covered by the due diligence. Stakeholder engagement and training, if this is needed in the local language. Also, the whole supply chain and supplier risk assessment. And then at the end, they might need a tailored due diligence development and implementation. And they also might need to integrate their system with others, like with the CSRD, with the CSDD, and in the case, for example, to have the annual due diligence requirements. We didn't add everything here. These are fictive examples, but this one can be a package that an operator can choose out of whatever they are interested in. So we would like to ask you another question. What service out of these 5 services, we just chose 5, what service would you be requiring the most? And once this is done, we can already go to the questions. Thank you.
So again, this is very divided, and we see that people are looking into options starting from training and into developing the policies and how to develop their due diligence. Very interesting. But I would like to thank everybody that has been here and just tell or public that we are here to provide you with information and support. Please take this number and this name, Gustavo Bacchi. He's our sales director in Europe. So get in contact with Gustavo. We'll be happy to help you. We're here. Also, you can contact one of our local offices. You can access to Todd Frank in Indonesia. He will be happy to support you, and he will probably give you a good solution. With this in mind, I will have to say thank you very much to everybody here. Mohamed?
Thank you very much and have a good day. And we wish you all the best with the EUDR compliance journey.
Thank you.